So let's start. Let's talk about you.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Manny?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm in south of France, Provence. It's beautiful here. The air is great. I'm hanging out with a bunch of punks here. That is cool. We're doing this seminar mixed with the masters, and it's always great to be here. I think this is.
How many of these have you done?
I think it's about, I want to say 4 or 5, somewhere around there.
You've forgotten.
I forgot. I mean, it's amazing because every time I come out here, I'm always reminded of how cool this is, like, and why we do take the time to get on a 11-hour flight. I mean, door to door is like 18 hours, and it just reminds me of like, why am I doing this? And then you get here and you meet guys like these guys, and it's like, yeah, this is why I do it. This is good, man. This is fun. It's like, just like yourself when you started K-pop, you did it because you wanted to get that knowledge. And when I was growing up, we didn't have this, and and guys, if you remember, they were very closed off. There was no sharing information, right?
I was told that you couldn't, you just weren't going to get people to talk about certain sessions and things like that early on.
But even your own like style or philosophy, it was very, I don't know. It seemed like nobody wanted to talk. They call it secrets, and I'm like, secrets, really? I mean, they're whatever. But it seems like today we're able to. There's no secrets. We figure that, look, as a mixer at least, it's a level playing field, right? We all have the same plugins, maybe not the same outboard, but we all kind of have the same thing, and it reminds us that it's not really about some of the equipment that we're using. It's really about your taste, your gut, your heart and soul, and I think that people are becoming more comfortable talking about it. When I was growing up in the industry, there wasn't a lot of guys that you could rely on, so programs like this, magazine like yours, I mean, that's how we keep it going. This is our little subculture that we want to hold on to and hopefully help someone and achieve what their full potential. Even if it's not in the audio industry, I think that it could help. Seminars like this can help just in life in general, I think. You become a better person, man.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I believe that, and some rosé.
Rosé never hurts. Yeah, I mean, I think that, the idea of someone having closely guarded secrets, how could that even exist now?
Right.
If everyone has access to a lot of tools. I mean, I drool over what comes out, and I look at GarageBand. I think if I was a teenager and I was able to grab onto this and play with it, I would have felt so lucky because I wanted more than my 2-track cassette. Recorder, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll make one cassette go to the other cassette while I add another instrument.
The good old ping-ponging, right? Yeah. By the end of it was like this, so you couldn't hear anything. It's like the exciter's like,
lots of tape hiss.
Yeah. It's funny because when I was in high school, I wanted a 4-track. Man, I was like, it was like I saved every penny just to get a 4-track. And like you said, nowadays you can get a crack of anything and be producing music at any age. You have some 14-year-old kids on Logic nowadays that are like whoa.
Then they might be looking at it differently than we approached
it
coming out of the analog realm initially, because they'll see it as a more malleable format. I
gotta say, I'm extremely lucky that I came at the time I came, going from the tape and from, I was telling the guys how we used to mic drums and how we used to spend, with big budgets, we used to spend a week just getting drum tones. I mean, that's
auditioning snares.
Yeah, like 10, 20 different snares with different combination of mics and rooms, and then making that transition from tape to Pro Tools. And that transition unfortunately killed a lot of careers because, we're creatures of habit. We didn't want to change a lot. And so I'm so happy that I came and I have some knowledge of that to take to now this new generation of DIY. And I was telling the guys, just from learning as an assistant to mic a kit, it gave me so much sort of confidence and knowledge on how to EQ things and how to listen, how to properly listen, smack, oh, wait, move it 3 inches closer, okay, wait.
Well, I mean, like say we were watching earlier, you had something that had layered samples for a kick drum, right? There were like 4 different samples building a kick drum. And I was thinking about that as I was watching. It's like, you know, if we were dealing with a live drummer, we'd be finding the way to get that sound, you know, down to tape or Pro Tools. But here you're trying to make that sound by sculpting the
Right.
stacked
Exactly.
layers.
Yeah. And you know, a big thing nowadays too, when people send me sessions and they're like, "Oh, mix our session," and they have a bunch of horns, right? And I'm like, and they're all like zeroed out in the session. I'm like, why did you do that? You know, why did you zero everything out? That back in the day, we, you know, would track the horns. The producer would be in the room, a little more trumpet, less this. You're balancing. That's part of production. And then you balance it to 2 tracks. And then I would mix the 2 track, right? Of the blend of that. And nowadays they're like, no, we want to see what you can do with them. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, you did the work already that you like. Why would I have to redo everything you've already done? And it's probably going to end up sounding the same anyway. Right. So I feel like we're still in like the wild west of how to send proper sessions to, you know, for people to mix.
Oh yeah,
you know?
I mean, there's as you know, it comes in all kinds of different ways.
Oh man, my poor sisters, like they spend so long just organized. Sometimes they'll send us stuff that is not even the right song. It's like, but make it sound like this. What? Yeah, you know, just make it sound like that. Like,
you're like,
whoa.
Third chorus, there's only 2.
Right.
Wait a minute, I got the right song.
Those are the tough times. Hopefully someday will be. Those were the good old days. I was just saying how when we wanted a reverse effect, right?
Right.
Nowadays we're so lucky just to hit reverse on it. Back then, remember flipping the tape, the grease pencil, counting in, recording it.
Or if you crumple or drop the tape when you're flipping, or you're holding 2 reels and you're like, you crank that up, and then you're like, oh, it's going to sound all garbled now.
Right.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Anyone else ever worked on tape like that before?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know.
The good old days, man.
I mean,
remember we used to do edits?
I don't remember that.
Wow.
No.
It's like, I remember putting this section here, and I had a whole thing. This is the beginning and the end. Taping them up. I mean, I actually don't miss those days.
Yeah.
Crossfade, you would use your, you know, finger to kind of crossfade that a little bit. Yeah, remember that? Oh, I don't miss those days.
Dear. Yeah, we've seen a whole different. It's changed.
It's changed.
So currently, you're working out of Larrabee.
Yep.
And you become one of the owners there, or how did that?
You know, it's been like
been
an
a long
equity. Yeah, it's an equity thing where I had to do it, or else they would take my room away at some point. You know, so but you know, it's a great place. It's one of the best studios, you know, in the world, I think. I remember when I was, you know, beginning, I always wanted to have a room at Larrabee because all the guys I looked up to had a room at Larrabee at some point, and that was like kind of like a dream of mine. Like, oh, I want to have my own place. I want to have my own room at Larrabee, and I've been there for about 15 years now, and it works out really well. It's they got different rooms where they'll have a G and duality and K. If I want to do some grimy stuff, I'll go to the G. If I want to do some poppy, cleaner stuff, I'll go to the duality. And so
you can kind of book yourself as needed.
Exactly, which is really cool, really unique.
Right.
I just haven't been able to do the whole inbox thing. I don't know if I ever will. Maybe someday. Never say never. But at this point, I'm still, you know, still old school, man. I'm still using the desk as it, you know, just like when I started.
Tuning the levels.
Performing I grew up performing mixes, you know, watching guys perform mixes, and that's kind of like what we've been talking about this whole weekend. Like, look, perform a mix, you know, as opposed to visual mixing, you know, and I think there's something to be said for both, and if you can combine the two, then you know, I think you have better results. At least for me, I've had way better results if I perform it and then fix and perform. And I keep talking about left brain, right brain, and you know, and the psychology of what we do and how to get the emotion and all that stuff. That I think sometimes nowadays we forget that. We tend to forget. Hey man, at the end of the day, we're trying to, you know, what's his name? Dozier, the songwriter. We did a panel and he said, hey man, music is about an emotion. That's all. We're selling an emotion. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. I
Right.
mean, we know that, but we don't really think about it as so sell that emotion. And
Yeah.
that's what we're here, helping to sell that emotion. And whatever emotion that is.
You were talking earlier during one of the mixes and listening things where you were saying like find something for the listener to keep an eye on
Right.
and distract keep them hooked.
Yeah, keep them engaged. It's like the push pull, the walk somebody through a song. You know, sometimes you let go of that, and then you reel them in, and you let go and you reel them back in. I feel, you know, I don't,
Sure, yeah.
I don't love you. I love you. No, I don't love you anymore. Wait, I do love you. No, I don't love you anymore.
It makes sense though. I mean, tension and release and things like that are
Yeah,
part of music. Eh?
It's an emotional, it's an emotion that you can, and utilizing those things and being aware of how people react to music, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's focus on something. Well, now sometimes the productions are not as good that we get, or some better than others, I should say. I always say that the mixer wears many hats. Today may be the A&R, tomorrow maybe a producer's hat, the following day a therapist's hat, you know? So and when to wear those hats and do it. So what we've been focusing on is just, look, when you hit a wall, because of whatever reason that is, could be production, could be a bad day, could be whatever it is, how you get out of that, you know? How do you hopefully get a song sounding the way that the song was intended? Someone, it was in someone's head at some point, right? Whoever that is, or a combination of heads. How do you get that and get it to its fullest potential? You know, and I think sometimes we lose track of that. We lose, you know,
The people that are creating the song.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I think sometimes it's such a DIY world now that you know it goes from here to there to there. There's no interaction as much anymore. There is sometimes, but so how do you decipher? It's like you gotta like read minds nowadays more.
Do you feel it's almost like archiving or archaeology when you first when you first hear a track that you've been sent to mix?
Absolutely, that's a great. I'm going to use that, and I'm not giving you publishing for that.
What's one of the first? I mean, I assume that's kind of along the lines of what I was going to ask you. Like, what are the first things you do when here's a new track? It's coming to you. You're going to mix it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the routine that you usually go through?
Yeah, so you know, my guys get it ready for me to mix it on the desk.
And what does that entail?
That man,
I don't want to go into too many details.
No, that's fine. But
Yeah.
what they do is they get a rough. We always ask for the rough that they've liked, because you'd be so surprised nowadays. We get tracks like we were just talking about that it may be a completely different song, right? So they have the wonderful job of going through the rough and going through each section and making sure that all the tracks are there. They all match what the rough is, the right arrangement. 8 out of 10 times, it won't even be the same arrangement. I mean, you'd be so shocked today. We get files that are, 8 out of 10 times are not even ready.
Is
to
that
be
because
mixed.
like elements are missing? I mean,
Missing, or it went to this programmer and then went to the vocal producer, then they did vocals at this studio, and that studio had disc allocation or whatever, yeah, and then they send it to us because we got to mix it right away, and it's again 8 out of 10 times is not ready to be mixed. So sometimes it can take a couple of hours, other times it can take 2 days just to put together.
I mean, do some projects have like a project manager that follows the album along?
Man,
just to keep
you
that
know
stuff
what?
in
Every
check?
project should have that. That's a
Right.
great idea. I'll sign up for that job, like just to get it done right.
Yeah.
But then we'll get it. They'll go through it. So now we have what their rough is, because now they'll have 10 roughs.
Right.
The artist will like one rough. Yeah, exactly. And then the label will be like, no, you got the wrong rough. We like the demo. So deciphering that is another, set of emails.
Are you using that to kind of gauge what they might be expecting from the mix to a certain degree?
Yeah, maybe. It depends how many roughs they're listening to.
Yeah.
The really cool part now is when you have one rough that everyone agrees on, and you're like, yes. But then you'll have, hey, listen to this demo from 2012. And listen to the vibe of that demo. And then listen to this rough from 3 months ago. We like the way the instrumentation and arrangement is. And then listen to this rough from last week. This is what the latest one. And then you listen to all 3 roughs, and they're like completely different songs almost. There's
Right.
like, I'm missing something here. Where do you go from the demo that only has Rhodes and vocals and like that
Right.
vibe, but then you have a fully produced version of that? You'll never get back to that. It's
Yeah.
like, so deciphering that is another part of the
Right.
process. So say once we've done all of that, and I have two roughs. One is hey, listen to these drums, cool. Listen to the vocals, and combine the two somehow.
Right.
And then we get it on the desk. I come in and I start mixing from the desk. And at that point, it becomes a creative process for me. Like,
Right.
and we've done some exercises this week on how to tap into the right side of the brain while you're doing that. We need both sides, but right now, let's just get lost in it. I haven't heard this song the way the artist, producer, everyone's been hearing it. I'm sort of fresh into it, so I want to capture that raw emotion. And then listen to, okay, the drums are, okay, I'm kind of in that area with the drums. And then listen to the other off, I'm definitely not there because my vocals are a little warmer and they want a little more pointy vocals. So deciphering all that is where the art comes in, right? It's like what your taste is like. What do you use? I think you walked in when we were talking about focal points and what should we expect the listener to gravitate to, so that they can hold on to something.
Right.
There's a different, I always say that there's so many times when you have a song that really connects with you and obviously the team, and then nothing happens, right? Nothing happens. The label thinks, it's testing or researching. They love the word research.
Researching?
Yeah.
Like how people are.
Yeah, they're going to react to it. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But no one wants to talk about that. It's so interesting. It's probably the mob running that joint. So it's researching well, so it's going to be a hit, and it's a great song. And I'm like, yeah, that could easily be a hit. I mean, it's a great song, great production. It triggers an emotion, and then nothing happens, right? And they wonder why nothing happens.
Yeah.
And it sometimes nowadays everyone's trying to. We talked about how loud it is, the level wars, right?
Right.
And it sounds great, but you don't want to listen to it again because it's so exhausting. Right. So that's what we were trying to the psychology of look, what volume, what loudness does to you, right?
Yeah.
You listen to something, and although as great as it may sound, you just don't want to listen to it again because you're exhausted. There's no dynamic, right? There's no ups and downs. There's no push-pull. It's just like,
There's like a balance between harshness and warmth that, to find a place where
absolutely.
things
Or
pop, but also things draw you back.
Absolutely. And just dynamics. Dynamics is something that we miss today because of that. Moments in the song that your body can actually relax.
Yeah.
As opposed to running a sprint, you're tired. It's like you go from 0 to
Just keeps hitting at you.
Exactly. And then labels, and everyone wonders why it wasn't a hit. Why it didn't connect. Right. Well, it's a great song, but we have, it's so powerful that things that we can do that you got to balance that. That's probably, if you didn't ask me this question, but I guess if you were to ask me what are one of the biggest challenges as a mixer today, that may be probably one of the biggest ones. Like, how do you get it? And we're discussing this earlier. How do you get it as loud without, jeopardizing the integrity of that song?
Right. Just getting it super present,
but yet musical, so that you want to keep listening to it. I think that's one of the biggest challenges today.
So. Are you trying to, when you were mentioning earlier, almost like the mastering being almost an extension of your mixing process too.
Nowadays it is, yeah.
Like trying to get things hot and popping in the bus, hitting hard enough and not. Do you find that's partly just because artists and management and labels are just like, if you deliver something quiet, they just go, "What's wrong?"
They're like, "Oh, it sounds too dull," or "It sounds too." Yeah, absolutely. It's not exciting enough.
Then what does the mastering person do?
Yeah, well, nowadays, exactly. Back in the day, we didn't have those tools, right? We didn't have, I just played a song that I mixed almost 20 years ago, you know, and we discussed on how we delivered it, and I remember delivering it like 8 9 dB softer than how it comes back.
On a DAT?
You know, pre-DAT days.
Pre-DAT, even better.
Yeah. So then you're like, the label goes, oh, mastering saves records, man.
Right.
That is, they don't know the difference. It's just louder. So then you start to think, like, now we have those tools. Now we have control over how we use those tools. We may not be mastering engineers, but we're always searching for what the end result is going to be.
Right.
You know, and I feel like mastering today plays a completely different role than it did 20 years ago, 10 years ago.
Right.
So now what needed a little help on one of the mixes may not need as much help. We still need mastering, of course, because we still need a lot of the services that they do. For example, adding the CCIDs and doing the 5 different versions that the label wants. You know, the international version, the clean, the dirty, the Best Buy, the instrument, the Target special. You know, not my thing. I'm not knocking it, just not my thing.
Yeah.
You know,
We were talking at lunch about that. Like, what is someone getting hired for? You know, what are you going to bring to the table that's worth, you know, people spending money on your time?
Exactly.
Have you ever had sessions where you were asked to mix something and you felt like you really were the wrong person for the job in the past?
No, I don't think so. Only because I feel like the cocky little 22-year-old in me comes out and says, no, I can mix it all. I can put it in front of me. Challenge, you know. I want to challenge more for myself, you know. It's like, I don't care if you put any genre, just put it in front of me. I trust myself that I'll give it the best I can do. You know?
Right.
And so I've never been intimidated by you know, mixes or any of that stuff. You know, to me it's like, it's a challenge. And I do love challenges, and I think that's really what drives me, you know. There has been records where I'm intimidated by them, but it almost, you know, it almost puts me in a weird state of mind where I'm more focused and I spend not necessarily more time, but more energy into it.
Or thinking about it.
Yeah, in a different way, exactly. I keep telling these guys that the moment you get comfortable in what we do, that's the moment you're done. Yeah.
The door just opened.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's a whole line of guys that are ready to take your spot.
Sure.
So being comfortable is not good. But then we need to be comfortable at the same time because we're creatures of habit. So that, it's like, I always say it's like doing yoga. You know, you're holding this really hard pose, but your mind has to be so, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, so clear, and your breath, you know, your breathing becomes really slow, but you're holding this really tough pose. That contrast is kind of like mixing sometimes. You got to be your adrenaline, you know, it's got to be like, but you got to be very conscious of what you're doing at all times. You got to be in control at all times. Or else, I always say, you go into that deep hole, man, and it's going to be tough to get out of that. You know, you almost have to sometimes start over in a way, you know.
Do you have much attended mixing anymore? I mean, is that something that it's shifted so much?
I know, it's shifted a lot. I would say 50%. 50%.
Wow.
Yeah, which
That's
is still a
high.
higher number. Yeah, because
Higher than I expected.
Yeah, you know, I talk to some guys and they're like, oh, I haven't seen someone in 5 months.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's my charming, you know, and I'm so charming and people want to just come and hang out with me. You know?
Yeah, that's it.
Could be it. Could
Do you have
be.
a well-stocked fridge outside?
Oh yeah, and there's a bar and a fridge and
yeah.
and there's a grill outside.
A big parking lot?
A big parking
that's
lot.
good
I got a
enough.
patio too.
Okay.
Ooh, people like to hang out in the patio.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still about 50%. You know, for me, it's like, it's great when they show up because we get it done quicker, and I can see their body language, and I can tell a lot about how they're listening and what they're thinking in a way.
I told someone the other day, I said it's the twitch.
Yeah.
The twitch tells. 'Cause
right, yeah.
There'll be someone sitting on the couch, and you don't even have your back. You have your back to them, maybe.
But you feel it.
But you can feel this, you know, and then you're like, oh, I think they're not liking something.
Yeah, exactly.
The bass is too loud.
Yeah, or they'll be doing this, and then then they stop, and then they get back. I'm like, okay, that's a flag. Note. C1, come back to C1. So it's easier and it's fun. It's fun. That's the way I grew up making records with people in the room. I miss some of that, but at the same time, I don't miss some of the clients that come in that shouldn't really be making mix calls, and they come to a room that they've never heard before. They don't know what they're listening for. They say, I'll play, I'm still mixing on the understands. They'll play it on the understands, and I know them, and I'm thinking it's sounding really cool, right?
Yeah.
And there'll be some clients will be like, man, it needs to sound bigger. It just doesn't have any low end. I'm like, and I forget. Yeah, I forget. I'm like, oh, I'm on the understands. Hang on, let me play it upstairs or something that has some type of sub, and it's a completely different experience. They're like, yo, that sounds so big. It's got the low ends feel so good. Exactly. What if I said, oh, wait, it's not big enough. Maybe I need more low end. Maybe I need more this, more of that. And then I get insecure and I start doing it, and next thing you know, the mix is gone. So
it's part of the game.
But it's teaching your clients, training. I always say training your clients too. Like how are they gonna react? And so some of these folks shouldn't be coming to the mix to make changes. A lot of the times they'll come in and make changes, and I'll print a version before they come in, and then they'll end up undoing 80% of the stuff and then they'll stop showing up at that point. I'm like, you know what? I know myself. I'm gonna start tweaking your mix. Just send it to me. Yeah, but you're only 5 minutes away, man. No. Just send it. So it's good and bad. There's positives and negatives.
Yeah, I've had that. Same thing. It's just I don't know how to. You want that input. You don't want anyone ever to feel, an artist especially, to feel left out, or a producer to get shunted aside.
Right.
I don't think any of us would want to work that way.
Yeah, you're right. Because then artists feel like that you're taking their, especially producers. Like, what do you mean I can't come to my mix?
Right.
No, you can't. It's not that you cannot come to the mix. Why don't I send it to you first, and you listen to it in your studio? Send me notes, and then you can come in. Because then you hear it in my room, but you know what it sounds like in your room. Stuff like that. Figuring out ways that saves time and saves on those, not recalls, but those updates. Those stem updates that we all
This. Do you ever go over with your clients, like, kind of discuss what they're listening on at home? Because that can be an issue.
That helps, but it's like at the end of the day, I trust my room. I trust my room and my ears, and regardless of where they're listening to it, they'll say it needs more bass, and I'll be like, are you sure? Are you sure you need more bass? But every once in a while. What's that?
Laptop speakers.
Right. Yeah. I can't hear the 808s. Where are you listening? On my earbuds. Oh, geez, all right. Now we got to distort it and add to it. And, we're adapting. There were years that, wow, how do I make an 808 sound good on those little, earbuds or, and you adapt. You're like, oh, if I distort the 808 and I bring it back in, I can actually hear the tone now.
Right.
For the little guys, and I can get them to sound big on the big ones. I can get it to at least have a rhythmic tone on the little guys.
Right.
So adapting.
But isn't that also a dangerous curve? Because you can kind of dumb it down so far that you end up with a really shrill mix, or a mix that's not really.
I think it's inviting. It's that balance. Yeah. I'm getting to know the frequency for the earbuds that you can just sneak enough that it's not gonna be, it's not gonna destroy the mix, but it's just gonna add to those that only listen to it on the, on the Macs or the earbuds. It's weird how we're thinking about stuff like this. Where when I was like my early days. We didn't think about any of that. We had a whole other set of problems, though. We had a whole other set of problems, like the biasing on the 820. So, you're
which Dolby was that?
Right.
Yeah.
Or track 24's SMPTE is leaking way too much on track 1.
Oh yeah, it's always good stuff.
Mm-hmm. This is for great stories, right?
Yeah. Oh, the war stories.
Oh boy.
Listen,
I used to walk 20 miles on
20 miles through Simpty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I missed the sound of Simpty though, remember?
Yes. Oh, I don't miss that.
I miss it.
I thought I heard some in a
It's like that perfume, you know.
I swear I heard somebody using it like as a noise, like in like an EDM track, and I swear I heard like delayed Simpty burst.
That's funny.
Oh my! I was just like,
You're like, no.
I want to hear that. Yeah, it's like you're in a 10K test tone. You know?
Oh, jeez.
I don't need any more of that. I don't need any more of that.
Good old Simpty.
So you did some Rolling Stones tracks a while back.
Yeah.
Was that a kind of occasion like you mentioned earlier, where there's a little bit of a pressure around it in your head?
You know, I try not to put pressure on myself.
Yeah.
It was just the Stones. I was super excited because it was the 50th anniversary, and it was the first original tracks in about 8 years.
Yeah.
Don Was produced it. I love him.
He's
so
great.
it's incredible. And he gave me the call, and man, it was amazing. It was just so flattering to get that call, you know. I mean, this kid, you know, like, I'm a fan of music, so for me it was just kind of like a dream come true to see.
Yeah.
You know, I had worked with them on the recording end when I was working with Babyface back in the day, but to be able to mix it and then, you know, see, you know, their names on the desk, and it's pretty amazing. And then, you know, and again, I don't put pressure on myself, but I was just excited. Talk about adrenaline, like, you know, and my thing was like, how would I like to hear the Stones as a fan in 2015 or 2014, whenever a couple years ago? How would I like to hear them? You know, so we kind of went for that. It sounds like the Stones of 2013 at the time, you know, and I thought it was pretty cool. It, you know, it still had the integrity of what they are. So we didn't change it. And then we did a remix with Jeff Basker that kind of has more of a contemporary sound. But we still, the Don Was sound, the songs, produced songs, man, they had that energy, you know, that Charlie energy and all of them, you know.
You get that, so you just, was it amazing to just solo the drums, listen to that feel?
Oh, man. It's like, there's few moments in your career where you can honestly pinch yourself and be like, whoa, how did I end up here? They're going to walk in and kick me out and be like, done. Time's up, kid.
Right. Oh, wait, we made a mistake. Oh, no. I thought you were someone else. How many tracks is a session like that?
You know, it was pretty straightforward. It was just like drums, bass, a couple guitars. It was pretty basic. Yeah. You know, I was telling these guys that sometimes songs that have less tracks are sometimes harder to mix, right? There's a lot more room to hear mistakes and to fill, and man, it was just exciting to be on that. You know, and I treated it really like aggressive, but yet, you know, I try to go for it. You know, and luckily they liked it, so that was amazing. You know.
Do you know if the tracks were sent to other mixers at the same time, or was it?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Nowadays, probably. You know, nowadays, like, let's get three guys to mix it. See who wins.
Chop the three together.
Yeah, bro. We kept the verse from this guy.
That's one of the things I noticed earlier is you were mixing part by part. Is that something you always do? Like start with like the loudest chorus and pay off?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because nowadays I'm trying to mix really, really hot.
Yeah.
So I get the loudest section in the song, and I work backwards, because I always feel like once you've got that, then it's easier to bring it down as opposed to the other way around. Right. You know, I would start with a verse naturally, and I get it really slamming and hot, and then I had no more headroom. I'm like, now I gotta. So I figure, you know, if I start, usually I'll listen to the rough. Yeah. Find that's the loudest section. Most likely, I'll start with that. Yeah. Now, if it's a ballad, and if it's more of an R&B track that's more, you know, kind of linear, then it doesn't matter. But if it's in a very dynamic track, then I go straight for that loudest section. Right. And you'd be surprised, right? Like, you know, your kick tones, your guitar tones, or whatever that is, sound completely different than you would in the verse. Right. So then that's when I start popping EQs, doing a different treatment, and
To facilitate something like that, do you have your assistants kind of break up the sections?
No, I do it on the fly.
Yeah.
I do it right on the fly
So
as
just-
needed. I keep preaching about as needed. If it doesn't need it, then I leave it there.
Right.
But if if it doesn't give me a certain vibe in the verses that it did in the chorus, then what's the problem? Isolate the problem, and that's when I just either pop an EQ in and out, or molt it, or chop it up and do it myself. So yeah, I do that all myself, and it's so easy and quick to do, anyways. You know, my assistants are trying to set up other sessions that like where they're like, what? We're missing half the tracks.
It sounds like a busy place.
It's cool. It's busy. It's great. It's a good time, man. It's a time that I'll look back and I'm trying to enjoy every moment, you know, because it could disappear like that, I'm sure. And
it's a lot of, I mean, looking through your discography, it seems like a hell of a lot of output.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's a lot, right?
Anyone else do that? Like look through and see, like,
Have you guys checked out my
last number of
discography?
years? It's deep. But it's just like the amount, through the certain part, like 1 year, you're like, when did he breathe?
I've been talking about it all week. I'm trying to work smarter, faster, stronger. Sounds like a song. But I'm trying to be smart about it and just figure it out. Like the older you get, the more secure you get as a mixer, right? The more you've done, you just get better at it. I think. The thing that I've learned more, I think, in the last 10 years is how to get out of jams. That was my biggest problem, and it would really mess with me, with my psyche. I would get really not depressed, but it would really affect me. I'd be like, I go in the bathroom and like splash water in my face. You suck, man. You suck. I would take it really hard, and I'm like, I can't be feeling like this. I got to figure out a way to. If I do hit a brick wall, well, how do I get over that wall without having to run into the wall and break my face? So it's just trial and error, trying to get a system that works. I feel like now I got a really good system that the output is great. And by the way, I'm not cutting any corners. I'm just working smarter. And the level too it's been a very high level, meaning comes a lot of responsibility, a lot of like people that are relying on you, a bigger bullseye on your back, a lot of people that want to see you fail, a lot of people that want to see you succeed. The business, it's when you become that, it's like people want to, there's a lot that goes with it, and it can affect you. Thankfully for me, I just want to mix.
Right.
I just want to push faders and EQ.
What? And going back to your start, I mean, you've been known for mixing for a long time, but you learned how to mic up drum kits, and you're doing everything else.
Yep.
Full-rounded engineer, so to speak.
Pretty much, yeah.
When was the moment when you really sort of felt like it was transitioning into mixing?
It's so funny because
How does this happen?
Yeah, a little bit of Jose and
You're mixing.
Yeah, exactly. I've always wanted to be a mixer. I learned at this place called Fabrique Studios, and they were doing a lot of the hair bands at the time, and it was fun to learn on that stuff.
Oh yeah.
I went to a music high school, Hamilton Music Academy, and went to school from 8 till 4, and all we did was music and English and math and history.
A little bit of that.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Hence the accent. No, but that's all we did. We did music, and I heard the first day of not even the first day of school. When we were auditioning to get into school. I used to play drums, and I was there with my drumsticks ready to audition to see if I made it in. And the guy before me was just killing it, just like I've never heard anything like that before. I thought it was a teacher. I didn't think it was a student. And it was Abe Laborio Jr.
Okay.
So the bar was set right over there. Wasn't even reachable. Yeah, exactly. Man, I hate you. Shit. Now I gotta. What else can I do with my life?
Yeah.
And sure thing, they had a little studio there. They had a little Ramsa board, a Tascam 8-track, and Rio to Rio, and man, I just fell in love with that. I was telling the class earlier this week that I signed up for electronic music, which was like learn how to be a producer, right? So our class, it wasn't popular, but we had 8 kids in the class, and what we had to do all week was we had to program a song, write a song, not lyrics, but music, and we had to like DX7 and TX81Z and Oberheim and all these keyboards. Pretty cool. Elise's drum machine, and we'd program stuff, and then Friday would be, our test was to show what we've been working on. So David Sears, my mentor, really came up to me and said, "Oh, that sounds good, man. Now you got to mix it." I'm like, "You got to what? You got to mix it? What do you mean mix it? I thought music was just da 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 and out to the world." I was like, "No, you got to mix it. You got to run this. You got to track this, and then you put it through here, and then you got to blend everything, and you can do this." And from that moment on, I was like, it became an obsession. Yeah, it became like something that I had programmed, I could completely change with only frequencies, not musicians, not instruments, no, just frequencies alone. It fucked me up. I was like, wow, I can't believe you can do this stuff. I had no idea. So from that point on, I was 15 years old, and I was obsessed with mixing. I would go to Guitar Center. I was telling them that I would go and I couldn't afford a 4-track, I would go into, now they had 8 tracks and I would sit at Guitar Center mixing whatever their little demo things is. And I was just obsessed with it. It just became an obsession. And that's how I landed a job at Enterprise where they were tracking, and that was the best school, I gotta say. That was, to me, tracking like these bands that we would spend a whole week with, all the different snares, all the different kicks, all the different cymbals, and this.
What bands were you working with?
It was like a lot of like Winger and Queensryche and what's the other one? Kramer was doing one. Arcade was it? With the guy from Rad and the guy from Cinderella. It was cool stuff. I mean, it was the tail end of the hair bands. But it was just Bo Hill used to work at Enterprise a lot, so he'd have a lot of bands, and we would just. Man, it was great learning from like guys like Jimbo Barton, just watching him and him telling me, go track that guitar with the guy from Queensryche. And I'm like 19 at the time. And what do you mean? It was a great background for someone like me. Grew up listening to like hip hop, but grew up, from where I grew up, but also grew up playing and being a music head. So I think that kind of laid the foundation for me to, once the hair bands were done, it became a hip hop studio. And that's really where I learned the chops of like hip hop, having a guy tell you how to blend his kicks and blend his kick and snare. And something I didn't really understand, but they were great teachers, these young producers that, listen how it feels. And it was all about the feel.
Well, you're learning from the client, so to speak.
Absolutely. And that was like, man, you just can't buy that type of experience when, the clock is on and the pressure's on and they need something and it's high pressure and they weren't nice about it. You better deliver. If you don't deliver, you get fired, right? Simple as that. So it made me like really hustle. Like, okay, I need to, I hear it. And having conversations with cool producers like, there's a conversation between a kick and snare. And I'll show you what. Let me play some Tribe records, and then having someone sit you down and describing like, listen to this, listen to that, listen to the hi hat, listen to that conversation, speak that language, and having producers that would say that to me, like, I want to learn, learn how to speak that language. I'm like, oh, okay. So from that moment on, anything that I ever heard in my life was listening to that conversation. How did the kick in hip hop at least, or R&B at the time,
and pop music too.
And pop now, At the time, it was it was predominantly hip hop and R&B, and having those conversations about how they speak to each other, it was incredible. Not only did I learn how to properly EQ, mic a drum kit, and but now I'm learning how to mix programmed drums and beats, and from that point on, it was just, it was the best school. It was the best school for me to do that. And then, having the knowledge of playing, being a drummer,
Right.
how
drums feel.
how they feel, how I used to tune my snare based on the kick and vice versa, and how I wanted my hi-hat, because now I was aware of the conversation,
Right.
And it was cool, man. It was, looking back, it's kind of like a perfect storm for me to be able to learn all that. And I think it set the bar for me. And that's really how I got into mixing. In the classic line, I told this story on how I worked at Enterprise and I kept bugging the studio manager for him to let me in and shadow a session. The classic story, they had a session, they had no assistant, they throw me in the room. Somehow I survive. And the guys liked me and they kept requesting me. One night, the assistant was sick of this one producer, and he was like tired of being in the studio till 6 a.m, and he left at 10, and he asked me to do a rough mix.
Right.
Because I was the one standing, and I did a rough mix. I woke him up around like 4 or 5. Hey, check it out, I got it. And he listens to it and calls his partner in New York. He's like, hey, man, I found this kid. He's going to mix the whole album. I'm like, whoa. Little things like that, And
the
album never came out. That's good.
I knew that.
Album never came out.
I know, that's terrifying.
It happens to it, yeah. It was the best. It was the most amazing. And then meeting, I did a lot of Taiwanese records and Japanese records early. Yeah, cool. At Enterprise, they would come over and they'd ask me to mix stuff. It's cheap mixing. I probably didn't even charge them for it. And I could really fuck up the mixes because none of my friends or peers or people that I was trying to get them to hire me would know that I screwed up a mix.
Right.
So all that's training, and that's
10,000
how
hours.
the 10,000 hours. I keep saying that, and that sort of prepared me to the real sessions. I think the ones that kind of started shaping sort of my career, and so that's long story short.
Well, Were there you mentioned the Tribe Called Quest stuff? Were there other records like that, or producers and engineers, mix engineers that you looked at back then and said?
Bob Power, Bob Power.
I figured that might come up.
Exactly. Bob Clearmountain, stuff like that. It was guys that were doing, they were innovators at the time, Big fan of their. And the crazy thing is that they're like the nicest people in the world too.
They really are.
And that I noticed all the guys I really looked up to were just, they were just really, really, really incredible people as human beings. And that was like the hope. Like you hear all the stories, and I was like, man, you can do this and still be a good person. I think.
So who's not a good?
Yeah.
Let's go
Well, I see 15 guys in me. So it prepared me to to at least be conscious of how you treat people, and especially people that you look up to and all that.
I think one of the real interesting things that I learned talking with Bob Power along the way too is he got his break because other engineers didn't want to be doing hip hop.
Right.
And it's a curiosity. You hang out with Bob and you realize he's very curious and excited about music, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's a music fan.
If there's ever a key to success.
Right? I keep saying, man, you got to be a music fan first. I'm a music fanatic. Like, I don't, that's it. I always say music saved my life in a really corny way, but it did. It really did. But it's funny because that you mentioned Bob saying, hey, the reason why I got into this was because no one wanted to work on hip hop. Very similar to what Enterprise was going through, because you have bands and you have all these like great albums that were done at this studio, and then all of a sudden hip hop sessions started coming in, and none of these guys wanted to do those hip hop sessions. And for me, it was like
foreign to them, or
it's just foreign. It's just not exciting. There's not real miking, and there's no mic. There's no musicians in the room. There's programmers. Exactly. For me, it was like, what do you mean? That's not. For me, it's an opportunity to work on stuff that I enjoyed anyways. So it was good.
Were you buying records like that anyway, just checking out?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I couldn't afford them, but I would go into the record store. Yeah, I'd go in the record store and be like, I mean, today, man, my kids have Spotify. Geez, the level of discovery today to
Right.
where how we grew up it just blows my mind. I mean, I would have, I'm more excited about music today than ever, because I do look at. I'll ask all the artists I work with, what are you listening to nowadays? And they'll tell me, and I'll write it down when they're not looking, and I have a list.
I've always done that.
Yeah,
I'm always
that's
like,
great. So you're a music fan, man.
What'd you just say?
Exactly.
Go to Tower when it existed.
Right. Yep. The Warehouse Tower, Music Plus.
Oh yeah.
And then you get up, you look at your phone. Oh, I want to check out, whoever it is, and you turn Sonos on. You go to your Spotify, and boom, you play the record, and you're getting your coffee. You're on the phone. You're in the shower.
You're learning something.
You're learning. You're constantly listening as a fan, but yet picking up things here and there, and I honestly don't want to I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose that passion. I recently read someone sent me an article on the HuffPost how people at the age of 33 stopped discovering new music. I was like, it's like, fuck, I don't want to be that. I definitely don't want that.
No. I mean, it's kind of amazing because it's like, it is like your story, like, it saves your life is dramatic, but it's like, it did give me a focus.
Yeah. I tell all these guys, man, it's like, you gotta love music. You gotta be passionate about it. There's too many people that are not, and how can you be in a business that based on a passion? You gotta be a music fan, right? I mean,
I think you gotta always know more music than your clients do.
Yeah,
that's my theory. Is like if I know a wider variety and a deeper understanding of more stuff than the people that are hiring me, then I might be safe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Though it's
like
if someone walks in and they go, "Oh, it's kind of like a clave thing. It's Cuban," and you're like, if you don't know what they're talking about, you might just go down a nice little rabbit hole.
Yeah, you're right. The what? The cloud? Who? The cloud sing clavier?
I don't hear any clave. No, the clave.
And then the reversed one. Now you get really deep into it.
Right? I mean, it's just, there's things you want to know because it's like you can get. I mean, if you sit there and look ignorant, sitting right here, then
nobody wants to hire. No one wants to hire an asshole or how about an ignorant asshole?
Ignorant asshole. So that's how you get hired, is by not being an ignorant.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, but I mean, it is. I think that's a really important thing to think about. Not to.
Oh yeah.
My friends interviewed a producer once, and they were like, "What are you listening to lately?" And he was like, "Oh, talk radio," and he's like, "Do you want to tell us anything different?" Let's go back. Say that again. What would you like to say?
Oh man, I work with this pretty difficult artist. Had to drink some scotch before she came in because it was like I really needed that because it was so frustrating. And I asked her, she was like making some really weird comments on the mixes. And finally, I did ask her. I'm like, "Hey, what are you listening to nowadays?" She goes, "Oh, I don't listen to music." I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you must? No. I stopped listening to music 5 years ago. I think everything's crap today. It's like, man, I feel so sorry.
You're trying to make a pop. This is the artist.
Yeah.
And you're trying to make a pop-oriented record.
Yep, exactly. And that was, it's funny because I felt kind of like sad for her. Like, really, like this is your career and you're not embracing it, man. I'm counting the days. You're gonna your days are they're coming. You're gonna be gone really
never
soon.
Goes to different restaurants.
Yeah.
And you got to see what other people are doing.
And it's sad because she's a very talented, sweet artist, and I think she just lost the passion. The passion for music. It's sad. Sad.
I was watching you. The last session here, you took a song. You started rebuilding the low end initially.
Right.
And I thought that was fascinating to see how quickly things are happening.
Right.
And then one of the things I saw you do along the way was obviously triggering compression from the bus, from the kick drum, and getting the pumping sounds.
Yeah.
But then the filtering, and I loved hearing some of that. Just thinking of how are you drawing like manipulated filtering through a song in some cases? Or
yeah, it's funny because I tend to do that a lot for dynamics. We talked about the loudness, the level wars, and I feel like the only way to sometimes have dynamics on a track like that is by filtering things, like
pulling frequencies in and out,
exactly,
or featuring frequencies.
Exactly, that's exactly it. Simple as that, but it's so effective if you do it the
Yeah.
right way, and you find what instruments to do it with, because it's so effective, and that's just a style of mixing that I keep sort of working on and developing, so that I always say is that it's in your back pocket if you need it.
You got a lot of things in your back.
Yeah.
There you go.
Ooh, I got some business cards too.
Always. No, one of the things I thought was really neat was like, obviously that if you roll a high end off of a source, say, it can take it away from the brightness of a snare hit and then bring it in.
Exactly. I always, I told the guys this week, if you were to describe different, this would be something cool that we should take pictures of, like, hey, describe 1K with a facial expression, right? How about 100 hertz? How about 1K, guys? Let's see 1K. Come on, exaggerate it. There you go. Look. That would be a good thing to do. Yeah. Describe 50 hertz. I love it. I love it. So So how do you want to feel at that moment? When you have frequencies, you have different facial expressions, right? So hey, if you want to have the ooh or whatever that is, you either accentuate it or you take it away, right? So when you want emotion to or dynamics to, you have the and that's how I approach it. It's like what can we do when the level is there? What can we do to sort of create dynamics with that? And that's usually an very effective way.
I thought it was really cool, and also if you think of it in other terms, I guess as far as purely acoustic music, it would mimic, like, say, a horn crescendo. Things like that are built into music arrangement and stuff.
Yeah.
Like pushing the note harder in the end.
Yeah, and we talked about arrangement, how important that is as well. Like, transitions, like, stuff like that. Maybe not necessarily, but maybe there's a synth that needs to grow, and it just goes like this. It's a good way to draw that, so that by the end of it is a little brighter. So now you're talking about all these dynamics that we like. We like to feel those things, and that's why EDM is so great too, because dynamics are so exaggerated.
Right.
And if you can borrow some of that, and if you notice, they do that a lot. They do the filters, and then it opens up when the climax. And I remember listening to that. Yeah, I'm like, oh well, why don't I try to do that in my mixes? And that's really kind of how it started. It's playing around with different filters, very subtle though, to the point where you can't really tell, but you feel something happening.
Well, it's also important as to how a sound enters the picture, like sort of the ADSR of every sound, organic, non-organic samples, everything. When they land and how they come in the picture and how they leave, it's a huge part of our work. But rarely discussed. It's always assumed that things have a set thing, right?
Yep. It's amazing, and that's what we've been talking about that all week as well. Like, how can we help the arrangement? If you have, as needed as well, if you have a track that's been produced, that's incredibly produced, and you may have to do less of that. But then you have tracks that are that need a little help here and there, and that's what that's the producer hat. Hey, let's help dynamics, let's help these transitions, and usually that gives you a sense of emotion. Now it becomes an emotional attachment to that. And people wonder, why do I like this song so much? Well, there's very subtle things that we've done, that we've hopefully helped to create that connection with that song. And that's when you have like, oh, now I really connect with the song, as opposed to the other way around, where I feel like you were choking me for 3.5 minutes and let me go. So it's the complete opposite of that. How do you again, push pull? How do we you know, my buddy Brower always said, "Hey, I'm gonna grab your hand and walk you through 3.5 minutes," and I use that all the time and don't give him credit for it now. But you know, like that's really what it is. You got to walk this person through, and then you let them go and you catch them again. You know, it's that interaction that happens between the listener, and what you're trying, what's there already. You're just helping it. Just some steroids on it.
Does it feel like a fine line these days between mixer and producer, or production?
I think it's a very fine line. Yeah, very fine line, because it's the lines are blurry now, right?
Yeah.
Like the producer is an engineer as well. The engineer is a producer. The mixer is a producer. The producer is a mixer.
The mixer's an engineer.
An engineer. The mixer is the mastering engineer. You know,
Right.
like yeah, it's like they're all
The artist might be tracking their own vocals.
The artist is all of the above.
Yeah.
You know? And
Yeah.
I think it's like the Wild West right now. There's really no, like I remember growing up, tape op. Yeah, you're tape op.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're engineer. Yeah. Nowadays it's like, you do it all.
Everybody's running back and forth.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, listen. There's this level of excitement because there's no rules, and I kind of like that.
Yeah.
The fact that there are no rules, that's kind of exciting at the same time. So I try to focus on what is kind of cool about it, right? And it's like, because we have no choice, but there's something cool about these good old days,
These good old things that are happening now.
Exactly.
Well, it is. I mean, you get to write your own way of working and create something that's your own. I mean, that's why work comes to you, I would imagine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not because you sound like Bob Clearmountain.
Right, yeah.
Because you sound like you.
Yeah. I hope that that's it. And I don't know what that means, to be honest with you. And then I don't think about what that means.
Right.
I think part of it is I think my clients at the end of the day realize that I put a little piece of my heart in it. As again, corny as it sounds, I kind of do. I mean, I really put a little piece of what I feel into it with what they've given me. Sometimes we get stuff that is at the 20-yard line, and all we need is that extra 20 yards, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's at the goal line, and you're like, whew.
Yeah.
And other times it's not even, it's in the parking lot.
Gotta bring it in.
Yeah.
Get a ticket, get them in the door.
Exactly. So recognizing that, though,
Yeah.
I think is the art form too. It's like recognizing when is at the 20-yard line and what that really means. I think that's today's kind of art form. Where before I played, again, I'm so glad I played this song that I mixed almost 20 years ago. And I remember doing all these effects. Like I spent 6 hours creating a whole breakdown section with drops and reverse things and this and that and explosions, because it just had a breakdown, and it would have been so boring without any of that. And I think that's why they like my mix, because someone else had mixed it before. But it was like a different type of mixing back then.
Right.
Nowadays there's less of that, because the producer has the tools.
Right.
It's almost like the mastering again, going back to mastering. We have those tools.
Right.
So they don't have to work on that anymore. Well, we don't have to work on those delays and production stutter effects or whatever anymore. Now now it's a whole different art form. Right. It's still a tricky art. It's tricky because now it's almost like not what you do to it. It's almost what you don't do to it in a very tasteful way.
I mean, do you find yourself undoing at times too? So, like someone built something up and you're like, I don't think it needs all that, just a different way of doing it.
Masking it. Not necessarily undoing it, but masking it in a way that's not a focal point.
Right.
Where before it was. And now maybe you don't need that for just to help the song.
Right.
Not to nothing else but to help the song.
Right. I mean, it starts to become a little political too. I mean,
at times,
and you were mentioning earlier, like burying something, finding a way to bury it, but still helps the mix, but doesn't get in the way, in your opinion.
This business is based on egos, right? A lot of it. So, if you mute something, the word mute already is like you don't like it. Oh, that's personal, right? Now you're getting personal, man.
Dumb idea, Larry.
Yeah, exactly. Are you calling me a dumbass? Right? Next thing you know, So I'd rather instead of mute, maybe filter, maybe bring it way down.
Yeah.
And then at least I can honestly say, no, I didn't mute anything. It's still in there.
Right.
It's just low. Oh yeah, we'll bring it up.
Right.
Oh, okay, now I know you want that track to be a little more feature, and I want because now the other 20 tracks that really don't need to be in there, instead of me hitting mute,
right.
they're still in there.
You find that sometimes though that opens up a creative door that creates a texture you may never have thought of or
yeah,
such too.
sometimes, yeah, absolutely. And you run with that and you keep building on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's there's so many things that go that, you know, the psychology of what we do, right? It's like, this is the fun part. This is really the fun part.
Yeah.
But the politics that come with it, and it's part of it. And so I don't see it as, you know, it's just part of it. We got to deal with it.
Well, there's your ego, and also you're balancing your ego out of it a little to say, like, I want them to be happy. Because if you turn in a mix that no one's happy about, guess what happens?
Exactly. And I always talk about ego as well. I'm like, look, you know, you got to be confident but not cocky.
Yeah.
You know, because you can also notice, you know, an insecure mixer. Like that's really easy to, you know, very easy to spot.
Yeah, I noticed one thing you were doing. I saw you do. You said exaggerate and then pull back. Like you were doing a parallel bus thing on that one of your plugins, which we have to talk about. But you know, self promotion. But you know, you were going really up like a ton of low end or a ton of high end, and then going exaggerate and then pull back. Which I absolutely love. I do the same thing. Yeah. You know, because it's like, I think like you said, like an insecure mixer will do like 0.2 dB boost and go, is everyone happy? Is that better? It's like, what the fuck did you do?
Exactly. And I keep preaching about, look, I'll take the risk of someone not liking my mix for being an over exaggerator than the other way around. You know, it's like than being too mellow or too safe.
Yeah.
It's with music. It's like I don't like safe music. You know, I just don't enjoy that. I like, you know, something that triggers and I just don't like safe. So I'd rather risk that because I know that, you know, at least I will be fulfilled. You know? I'll be happy even if they don't like my mix.
You talked about dirtying up sounds too when I first walked in the room, and I thought, of course, you know, I mean, but what makes you look at something and go, it needs dirtiness? What
just need some grease, man. Grease it up. You know, I think maybe coming from an analog world, you know, I always felt like Pro Tools always clean things up. Maybe that's just in my mind nowadays. I don't know why I think that, but I don't know. It's easier, and maybe because I spent a lot of time with, you know, hip hop and stuff. Where in some I haven't spent as much time on rock things, but I tend to like stuff that's a little greasier, you know, not so clean. So if I hear something that's clean, I want to kind of fuck it up a little bit, you know. Good and evil. I always say in every mix, I try to look for whatever's the good and the evil. And if it's too much good, we need some evil. And then the other way around, if there's too much evil, you need to do the opposite. But it's most of the time it's the other way around. Most of the time it's too much good, bring some evil.
Right. I mean, like say like how harmony on the chorus, but then something buzzy and nasty.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. If you have like angelic sounding vocals and you got a pad, well, put some distortion under the pad. You know, you don't have to completely distort the pad, but give me a little grease on that, so that subconsciously you're thinking, you know, heaven and hell. I don't, you know, that's just the way, you know, I kind of approach it. You know, like so I like fucking things up a little bit. You know, it's character. You know, it's taste. We've talked about taste a lot. Yeah, you know,
it's important to have some. I mean, how would you?
And I asked everyone, how do you get taste? How does that happen, right? And then, you know, my thing is, hey, listen to as much music as you can. That will build taste. Oh yeah. You know,
and figure out what you don't like.
What you don't like is as important as what you like. Yeah.
I mean, I remember would get records by an artist I liked, and sometimes they put out an album and go, I don't like the way this one sounds. Right. So then I just would try to figure out why. What they do that I don't like, you know. Gated reverb. Could have been in the 80s, right?
The Rev 7.
Ugh.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's things.
They're making a comeback, I hear.
Oh, I just sold mine. Shit.
A couple $100, eh?
Yeah, not much. Not much. You know, I mean, there's certain stylistic things that can be misapplied, you know, stuff like that. So,
So we've talked about taste a lot. You know,
Yeah.
we've talked about left brain, right brain. You
Yeah.
know how they have to be equal. You know, there's something beautiful about always working from the right brain, but something cool about knowing how to control the left one as well.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of us, especially engineering, because we have technology, we are left brain thinkers. We think how to fix, right? Schools are teaching us
right.
this is how you use a distressor. This is how you use a Pultec. And
Right.
it's about the equipment, right? And
Yeah.
by the way, it's important. I'm not saying it's not, but I feel like it leads us to think that we're technical, you know,
Yeah.
more than, hey, sometimes you gotta kind of shut that down and just go with your gut.
Yeah.
And I don't know if schools teach you that much. You know, I don't know. Like, exactly.
I mean, that's the hardest part. I mean, I was,
Yeah.
you know.
You know, the other thing is passion, right? Passion. How do you
Yeah.
teach passion, right? Exactly.
Good luck.
Exactly. It's,
I think
it's
some
usually
people don't grab onto it. Some
Right.
people don't. They don't naturally
Exactly.
gravitate towards that.
maybe because it's not. You never talk about stuff like that, right? You never
Yeah.
talk about teaching someone passion, right?
Yeah.
Schools obviously don't teach it, and the ones that grasp that you know, there's always somebody, whether it's your history teacher, your parent, your friend, whatever that is, whoever that is, it's up to the individual to grab onto. But
Yeah.
but I think that if you were to make people aware that, hey, this is another tool that you may need in life, period. Like,
Yeah.
you could be passionate about anything and you'll be happy. You know, you can be passionate just about anything.
Right.
And that's the one thing that they don't teach us, you know. And it's important to at least bring it up to, especially a class like this, where,
Yeah.
you know, hey, be passionate, you know.
Well, it's a mix of both. I mean, there's technical and there's the passion.
Exactly. It's the balance, right?
Yeah.
It's the perfect balance.
I'm always amazed. Like, I'll be in the studio and someone comes in there. Oh, I can't wait to use that. That's
Right.
so good. And I'm like, we'll plug it in if we need it.
Yeah.
You know, we're not here just to play with the LA2A.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Well, you said the magic word for me is as needed,
Yeah.
right? These are tools. They help us get to, you know, don't get me wrong, they're great tools, but as needed, you know. Yeah, it's funny, yeah. We always have those guys like, wait, you got a 33609? Oh, man, I died to have one of those.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons you might not be using the gear is because you have a line of plugins out.
Hey, you know, the whole point of being in the south of France is to we sell some plugins.
That's exactly. Was that your billboard I saw down the road?
Yeah,
For the
you know,
plugins?
yeah. It's gonna get better. It's gonna be all over the place
Good.
soon enough.
Yeah.
Man.
Come about? How does
You know-
I mean, I've always wondered what's the process.
Yeah, you know, Waves has a signature plugin series, and they came up to me, and there's a guy that believed in me there, Shahar and Mike Fratas, and they asked me to do it, and they thought, look, man, we need some young, I shouldn't say young.
Younger than me.
Yeah. What can we do with Manny? And we just, man, it was like an opportunity for me to selflessly create a line of plugins that I can use for myself.
You know.
And
So
I
you didn't
did.
just make them and then you're like, good luck, and then you're using
No.
something else.
No.
Using a
I mean, I
CLA
think these
plugin.
guys have seen that I use them on everything
Yeah,
I do.
yeah.
And it's not like, honestly, I created them for me, and hey, if you guys think it's cool and you like them, great. If not, hey, I got my own plugins for me not to use 5 different pieces of gear or
Right.
5 plugins to create one thing.
Right.
You know, so it was very personal, you know, and it's great. I mean, it's got a great reaction, and it's funny because it feels like the plugin line is doing this as time goes by, where I don't know if that's the same with other plugins. You know,
Right.
it's they hit the peak and then it goes down. Where with these, the more people that discover it, they're really like, oh shit, I didn't know that EQ was modeling 5 different EQs, 12 different bands or whatever. You know?
Right.
The EQ is like, when you go to 12K, is this piece in my room? When you go to 150, is that piece in my room. When you go to, it's like a hybrid. It's a super EQ. It's really a super EQ. And that was for me, just because I'm selfish, and I thought, I got a Quad 8, but I'm using it, and I need it for that.
Right.
Fuck, it would be so awesome if I had a Quad 8,
Right.
And that's what I have in the plugins. My delay has like 5 different things that you can do on it. Where before I'd have to spend so much time getting something that, in effect, then I just wouldn't do it. It's like, it takes too long to do this stupid delay or whatever,
And that's an honest thing that people don't talk about, but it's sort of like, there are many times where you just kind of go, I could plug all this stuff together, or put all these things in and program on the plugins, or I could just put a little quick delay and an EQ on it and call it good enough.
Yep. That's exactly it. We all do that. I get a little lazy. I'm like, man, I have a blundered tongue. Could be so cool on this guitar.
Yeah.
And then I can move on. But I constantly remind myself, like, I have a system where I'll write the insert in, and like I will do it while I'm on the phone or stuff like that. But you're right, man. We get really lazy. So that was it. I thought, what are the 5 or 6 things that I need that would be cool to have? I always thought, let's do a deboxer, deharsher. There's so many harsh things. I want to be able to just get rid of the harshness without opening up this plugin and doing this and this. Let me just get the curve that I tend to take out all the time, and that's for me. That's like based on what I hear or how I hear.
That's a pretty common thing these days too. I find myself
plugins.
Doing the deharshing of stuff.
Yeah.
Plugins are kind of common, strangely enough. But there's one called Refinement, Brainworks.
Oh yeah. Okay, I haven't used it. I've seen it. Yeah.
It's cool, and it's like I'll use it. It's probably doing a similar thing, is I can put it on something that's like home recorded, say, or got a real pokey mids. You know what I mean? And I'll put it on there and just kind of smooth it down a little.
Yeah,
retain some fidelity.
I'll try that. Check it out.
It's fun using that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And and to have a reverb that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
Unlimited. It's cool. It was cool. So that's the main reason why I did it. And Waves was cool enough to, do it together.
Should we do a Q&A?
Yeah, of course.
Hell
yeah.
Would you guys
want to ask some questions, or
you might get your question in print?
Yeah,
we're working you guys hard today.
Jeez, look at these guys. You guys need some booze or something.
Thematically with where we've gone, or something totally left field. It's good.
You got a question for me? Okay.
Yeah. Which are your favorite producers right now?
My favorite producers right now, there's Greg Kirsten. Greg Kirsten, Sia, and he's done a ton of stuff. Great producer.
See, I should be taking notes for interviews.
Yeah. No, definitely. He's one of those guys that he actually is in a band called The Bird and the Bee. Him and his wife. Great guy and great band. Super talented. Alex the Kid, because he just pushes it to the limit, and I love that. That's why we get along. When we get together, there's just no rules. I'm usually the conservative one in that, which I'm usually not. Like, no, that's too much L2, man. That's my sound. All right. Man, there's like so many cool producers right now that I get the privilege to work with. But honestly, those 2 guys right now are amazing. Malay, that Frank Ocean. He's got such a great sound. Justin Metal Johnson. There's so many good guys, right?
Question for you.
Yeah.
You've obviously been really successful at getting into the feel of a particular song. Do you feel like you've been more successful with that as your career has grown? And if so, what's changed?
That's a great question, man. I think it's just being more mature, just being wiser. Just understanding song structure from not only, it's like the innocence I had when I was younger. I now kind of analyze what makes a song, and what gets me excited about a song. So I feel like just experience. That's really the experience of knowing structure and knowing what a song needs, knowing what a song could have to have that emotional connection with not just me, but not the masses, but more people than just, than you can think of.
Have you been aware of that growth in yourself as
Yeah,
you've gone along?
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And that's really cool that, to feel, because you really feel it and you're like,
So you
fuck.
get
So,
hugged more often by your own mixes.
exactly. Yeah, I always say that. Yeah. I'm like, man, I just want to feel a big hug from the mix. Or sometimes I just want to be slapped.
This is a semi-technical question, but it's a mixed question.
No way. From Leonard? No way.
Surprise. So when you demoed your songs, right? There was Bruno Mars and there was Rihanna as an example of the two things, and where the vocals sat in the mix was totally different, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Where Bruno Mars sat kind of deeper into the mix, like more in the band,
Yeah.
right? And then Rihanna was way, was opened up, and she was like,
Yeah,
pounding.
cutting through. Yeah.
What makes you decide that? How are you thinking, and why do you say I'm going to put this singer up, and I'm going to put the singer in with the band?
It's a combination of things. It's not only my decision, but my decision is how I treat it so that it feels more like what they want. For example, Bruno, he's in the band. It's I don't know if you've ever seen him live. He's a badass. He's like one of the best musicians, performers that we have right now. So Rihanna is not in the band. Rihanna is the female artist that, for a song like Bitch Better Have My Money, is about delivery, and we talked about the lyric. It's pretty strong, to the point, in your face. So you can't have someone like that be in the background. So the song dictates that. Now, as a whole for Bruno is, some of those Michael Jackson albums, he's a big Michael Jackson fan. I mean, they were kind of in the cut, they weren't like out front. I think it's a combination of all those things. The other one is the fact that he's such a good singer, and if you put him out front, then he'll outshine some of the musicality that he really wanted to feature. So I think there's, those would be some of the reasons why. But like I said before, it's not about a loud vocal. It's just what the song is about. We played Moonshine, right? And we said, imagine Moonshine having the vocal 3 dB louder. It would have, it's like, Moonshine. I did that, and then, Moon, your body sort of changes. And I think that the emotion of that song is kind of just like, it's laid back, where Rihanna is like, better have my money, coming with a bat. So, yeah, hope that answers your question.
Every situation would be different,
Every song, yeah. There's no rules.
Do you ever get afraid that you might be developing too much of a style and stamping things in a certain way?
I don't think so. I mean, I
think so either, but I'm just...
Yeah, we played, dozen songs, and I think, they're at least, and they're very different. I mean, even now I played an album I'm really, really excited about, Miguel, this artist Miguel, and those songs are, man, they're very different. So I don't think, and it took some, shaping, because Miguel is Miguel, and I had a sort of, I wanted, not me, but I wanted to hear him slightly different.
Yeah.
So how do you combine what he really wants with what, hey man, this is your album, this is your third album, let's push it this way. And took a little push and pull, but it's an exciting album. And so you listen to that, and then you listen to some of this, a couple of songs I did for Atlas Genius. It's completely different. So I don't think I ever, at least not now, I don't have a sound, and I've always been aware of that. I just don't want a sound. And people say, oh, I love the way you, and I don't think about stuff like that, because I honestly just think of producer that brings me the song and how they want it to sound, and then I help them get there. What I've said earlier too is the best thing about the best thing that can happen to a mixer is when the artist comes in and gets emotional. I can't think of a better compliment than an artist that's been living with the song, that's probably wrote the song,
Right.
and has heard it a million times. I haven't played or replayed anything. It's just based on frequencies, and
Yeah,
levels.
right.
And that's like, and for them to get emotional, that's amazing.
Good.
And luckily, I've seen that a few times in my career,
Yeah.
and that's like, all I need is one of those every few years, man. And that's like gives me more fuel over,
Well,
you
you
know.
must be doing something right.
Oh, I hope. I hope. I'm telling you, one day someone's gonna walk in. All right, buddy. Time to go.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
Pull out
fine.
the door,
fine.
get you.
Yeah. So it's I'm like, when I was 9, we came to this country to America, right? And my mom, height of a civil war in a third world country, and she goes, "Hey, we're going on vacation." And
That's what you were told?
Yeah.
Wow.
My mom said, "We're going on vacation to California." So my approach to all of this and my attitude is, I'm still on vacation. So even the worst day of my career is the best day of my life,
Yeah.
And of course I'm being, a little over the top with it, but that's my approach. It's that simple. It's like, hey man, could be a lot worse. Let me tell you, could be a lot worse.
You could have grown up in a war-torn
This
area,
shit.
obviously.
You never, it could have been, who knows, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just, it's a very simple approach to it. Like, hey man, I'm enjoying every moment, every second, every song I ever mix. There's nothing else I can think. I can't do anything else. So this is incredible. I mean, to come to a place like this and be able to talk about what you love to do and hang out with
I've had worse
a
days.
bunch of punks,
Bunch of punks.
Yeah, it's hey, it doesn't get any better than that, in my opinion. So, and you get to play with music.
Music's fun.
Music is a lot of fun.
Other questions, you guys? Come on,
These guys have had so
You've
many
already been able
questions
to.
over. Yeah, they've asked.
This is not talking about. So,
No way, no, man. Are you okay?
So you ever think about your body of work and so that like Bob Clearmountain, you mentioned his name, and people look back and say that, he kind of was maybe changed the way mixing was done, or
Yeah.
do you ever did you ever want someone to look back at your body of work and say, hey, yeah, he's a badass?
No, I don't even think like that. I think it's, shit, man, I'm just doing what I love to do. If people want to think about, I have no control over that. So listen, it would be incredibly flattering to even be put on the name with a name like that. And I don't think like that. I just want to be able to be in the studio and just kind of work on stuff that I enjoy, and having fun. Whether that creates an incredible discography that someday, people will look back and it's like, yeah, he's a badass, then that's icing on the cake. Just want my kids to be proud too, Like if my kid someday told their girlfriend, man, my dad was a badass and I'm old and gray, and like that would probably be the biggest investment. Like
I think no one ever, it would take someone a bunch of years of study to even know all the things any one person worked on. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like when people say something to me like, "Oh, I like the record you do," I'm like, which ones do they know?
Right, exactly.
Who's gonna know like every single thing you've ever mixed?
Man.
Someone had to sit down for a while and work on
Jeez,
that.
and I've been, consistently doing it for a long time now, Yeah, and it's and for me it's like I'm not like interviews, like I'm not out there to like say, hey guys, look at me. So for me it's just been like a good ride. It's been like, look, I'm here for the right reasons. I'm here to just keep working on stuff that I'm proud of, and some of it not as proud of, but hey, this is the ride, man, and it's fucking incredible. It's wonderful. We get to do what we love to do, and
We're
they
not
pay
here
us.
if people don't write songs.
Right. Let's start writing some songs. Yeah.
That's what. Hey, start a songwriting team. You ready?
I'm down.
Yeah.
Talk about some cross-dressing Thursdays. Yeah. You guys must think like, man, Manny's a little weird. He probably is into that.
Yeah, since the journeyman system of learning how to be in the studio is kind of gone with all the studios that closed down. what do you feel most supported by, and what are you looking for when you're hiring an assistant engineer?
First is personality, attitude. You know, I don't like someone that's. I want an extension of what I'm like, and you know, definitely not someone that thinks he knows it all. You know, someone that's you can just hang out with 14 hours a day and be cool. You know, so you know, obviously they got to be able to know how to turn Pro Tools on. But besides that, I think we can train anyone to do that. It's just attitude. You gotta have, you know, you gotta want to be there. Supply and demand nowadays, it's like insane the amount of like requests we get. So it's got to be someone that just wants to be there and goes the extra mile and has the right attitude and wants to and always looking forward. Like, hey, we can do this better because you know I have a system, but I like when my guy takes the initiative to do something and that helps the workflow and I'm like, wow, that you actually thought about what can be, because that's how I am. I'm always looking for ways to have a better workflow, a better system. You know, my left brain is always engaged with like, how can we do this? How can we do that? How can we be better at this? How can we be more efficient on this? So when it comes to assistants, the great thing is that at Larrabee, I get to handpick them when they're runners. You know, I like, you know, I literally get the best of the litter, you know, like that person I get along with. I can see this person with an artist and not say something dumb, you know, and so I get to know them before, and then they start to shadow, and then I can see them in the room shadowing. Then they shadow my assistants, and my assistants will be like, he's not gonna gel well with you, or he is going to. He knows more than we thought. He doesn't know as much. So, but the main thing is, hey man, do you have a good attitude? You gotta have a good attitude. Again, none of us want to hang out with assholes, right? So that would be the number one. You know. Cool. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yay.
Safe travels back.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for the time.
did
Thank
it.
you guys for
Yeah, thanks so much.
being
everyone.
a boring audience.